Hello and welcome in to Addison to 35th podcast, brought to you by the great folks at Just Baseball Media Network. My name is Herb Lawrence. You can follow me on Twitter at Ectorwall23. Ectorwall is Lawrence, my last name, spelled backwards with 2-3 for Robin Ventura. On today's show, I'm going to talk about the White Sox, but I did a whole AL Central preview with great folks with the AL Central. You either have Nick Padone, who is covering the Cleveland Indians / Guardians now, Chris Castellani, who does great work up there in Detroit. He's covering the Tigers. Brandon Warren for the Twins, and just spoke today to Jarrett Perkins for the Kansas City Royals. So if you've missed any of those episodes, go check them out after you listen to this one, because those guys were outstanding and we had some good conversations about actual good teams. This episode will not be about that, because we know we're covering the Chicago White Sox in 2024. They had 121 losses, which is the most in the history of modern baseball. Just piss poor last year. Pedro Grifol is now gone. They still have retained Grady Sizemore. He's somewhere on the White Sox bench. He's still going to be there. He was put in a tough situation when he took over for Pedro Grifol. But the thing is, Chris Getz, the general manager, has done some good hiring in the offseason. Getting the best manager available, in my estimation, on the board, and Will Venable, was a coup. Going to get Ryan Fuller, who's going to be the hitting coordinator. He's going to be kind of what Brian Bannister is to pitching. That's going to be Ryan Fuller is to hitting for the White Sox. And so hiring him this offseason was a good hiring for Chris Getz. Also, Walker McKinven as the bench coach, who was up in Milwaukee helping the catchers and the pitching game. He is now a White Sox bench coach, and that was a great hiring. The things I do not like about Chris Getz's offseason. I know he's dealt a terrible hand because the team had lost 121 games, and so this is a long-term rebuild. But he was hired by Jerry Reinsdorf, if you recall, because Jerry said he can get this right the quickest. But you saw it last year. I saw it. This is not going to be a quick rebuild. The talent on this team is lacking. And so what does Chris Getz do in his infinite wisdom? He goes and gets veterans who are not good at baseball. Like, they need to play in their 90th percentile for the White Sox to acquire some players for these people back. And that's the whole deal. Like, instead of doing a bottoming out and letting kids play, all the kids play, he brought in Austin Slater, decent player, in his 30s. If he has his best season, what does that really bring you back? Not really a lot. Same thing with Mike Tauchman, who is now hurt. You got the same thing for Josh Rojas, who is now hurt. Same thing for Travis Jankowski, who is probably going to be starting in left field because Andrew Benintendi broke his hand earlier in spring training and probably can't play left field. He can't play left field when he's healthy. He definitely can't play with his hand still healing, but apparently he can hit, so he'll be the designated hitter to start the year. Travis Jankowski has a glove, so that's good. He will be traded because he has value. He can glove it, and he's a good base runner. So there is a person that will only be on this team for the first couple months and will be a good pinch runner. But really, that doesn't really do anything for the Chicago White Sox. And the most frustrating thing that Chris Getz did this offseason and last offseason is bring in a guy who has alleged off-the-field problems. We don't need to go into them. I know you're yelling, who was a Mike Clevinger fan. You're like, well, he was Major League Baseball didn't find him to do anything, and they didn't suspend him at all. Well, they made him go to anger management. They had a agreement with there, so there had to be something going on with Mike Clevinger a couple years ago, and people don't have good words to say about him. All I'm saying is look at his whole White Sox career and look at the rest of the major leagues. 2023, where he had his best year as a Chicago White Sox, pitched well as a starter, was available at the trade deadline. I know he came back right before the trade deadline after being injured for a long period of time. No one wanted him. No one picked him up. Then he was available on waivers in August of 2023. No one picked him up at all. Then he was a free agent at the end of 2023 season. Guess what? Every MLB team had a chance to pick him up. No one did, except for the White Sox eventually, right before spring training started for the 2024 season. Last year, I think he pitched 16 innings, 1-6, and he was hurt again. So this whole offseason, every major league team, including the White Sox, passed on him on a major league deal. Every one of them. He signed a minor league deal with the White Sox, and then they immediately gave him the closer role without any questions, without any actual merit. He didn't do the job before they're like, yeah, Clevy, closer. But I got to ask you, who's out there, the people who are out here listening to this podcast, what in the hell are the White Sox going to get back for a guy that the rest of the major leagues didn't want because he's hurt all the time? Last year, he was hurt and not good. And then he has the alleged off the field problems. Even if he goes out there and gives you the best Mike Clevinger season as a closer, and he's a lockdown closer, are you getting anything that you could use for this rebuild? Are you getting anything that is sturdy, that will bring you something that you can use 5-10 years down the line? No. No one's going to give you anything for Mike Clevinger. So I don't understand why they continue to be the only team that gives Mike Clevinger a shot here. It's ridiculous. I just get so aggravated that they continue to have this guy and alienate their fans, because most of the White Sox fans don't care about Mike Clevinger and actually despise the player. And there's rumors about why he's on this team, and I've gone through it in another episode, so I won't get too much into it because I'm getting worked up right now. But this is it. I'm tired of Mike Clevinger being on my favorite team. I hope he gets crushed. And I know you're out there like, why are you rooting against your own player? Because I don't like the guy. That's why. I hope he gets absolutely demolished and think it's DFA'd by the White Sox. That will be the best thing for the White Sox and White Sox fans. I will cheer that day when Mike Clevinger gets released or gets traded to another team. That will be great. But you know what? Let's talk about the starting nine that they have out there, because, friends, this is tough. I mean, you're going to have to root for Miguel Vargas, a 4A player up to this point, to finally hit his potential. Like, that guy is going to be the guy for the White Sox after Luis Robert Jr. gets traded. Like, you're putting all your eggs in the Miguel Vargas basket. Good luck. I hope he is the guy that the White Sox think he is, because otherwise, that trade last year when you traded away Eric Fetty, you traded away Tommy Pham, and then you threw Michael Kopech to the Dodgers for like nothing, and you got back the two minor leaguers who were years away, and Miguel Vargas, he reminds me of what they were saying about Nomar Mazara. When you start off a sentence not talking about how good the player is, but you start talking about how young the player is, oh, he's only 25. Oh no, oh, he's fine. He's 25. That's literally the first thing that they said about Nomar Mazara when Rick Hahn brought him over here for the 2020 season. Oh, he's 25. Watch out. I don't care how young is he. Is he good? To this point, no. When he hits the majors, he forgets what baseball is about. And remember, too, he's going to be your everyday third baseman. And if he is anything like his career has been, it's going to be a butcher shop over there at third base. These pitchers are not going to like pitching balls over the plate where they get a ground ball and Miguel Vargas has to go to his right or left and then throw the ball to first base with another butcher and Andrew Vaughn who has to catch the ball. So there is problems for the White Sox starting off. And I haven't even talked about Luis Robert Jr. Like, we know if Luis Robert Jr. is healthy 100%, he's going to get traded. He's going to have an outstanding season, and he's going to be traded to some team. I'm shocked that he hasn't been traded already before the season has started, because he's an inexpensive contract, $15 million this year, then has 2 team options for $20 million each year for the next 2 years. And a team like the Pirates would be perfect for him. Same thing with the Reds. You're not going to get a big-time superstar. They're not going to spend money on a big-time superstar in those markets. If you want one of those, you can get Luis Robert Jr., roll dice and think that, hey, maybe, just maybe, if we trade for him this year and he does Luis Robert type things, especially in that Cincinnati bandbox that they have there, he can hit 40-plus home runs in that place. Him and Ellie De La Cruz, mercy. And he has that type of year. You pick up that team option in 2026 like that for $20 million. That's a discount. That's a bargain. And the thing is, I don't know what other teams are asking, what the White Sox are holding out for. Are they acting like Luis Robert of 2023 is still out there? Because I know teams are like, nah, we're looking at 2024 stats where he's hurt and then bad when he played. So we're going to give you less than what you're asking for. So I hope that Luis Robert is the guy that showed up in spring training mashing the ball. The other day, he hit the home run off the A's. It's still traveling. It's like that home run he hit off the A's up in Oakland in the playoff game off of Michael Fires, like 480 feet. Just mercy. And then Andrew Benintendi, is he that guy that showed up in the second half, or is he the guy that has been playing for the White Sox the 2 years that they've had him? I think it's more the latter than the former. I think the guy came here and he wasn't good because he's not a good player. That's hard for you to hear, because when he was signed, he still is the highest paid White Sox free agent contract of all time, with $75 million for his 5 years. He has not come close to playing like that. The White Sox hope that Andrew Benintendi is that guy who showed up in the second half, crushing balls and hitting home runs, because then possibly with 3 years left on his deal, as we tape this episode, they can move him. Somebody else can take that money off of their books, because Andrew Benintendi is not the White Sox future, and he's just an albatross on their roster. They can play younger, better players than him, but since he makes all the money that he makes, he will have to be playing every single day. And speaking of a guy that plays every single day and has been a big-time disappointment, this is year 5 for Andrew Vaughn. The first year, you said, oh, no, they played him in left field. They messed him up. Wait until year 2. Year 2. Oh, man, his legs are tired. Just wait. Let him play all the games at first base. Year 3. Oh, man, here he goes. Here comes Andrew Vaughn. It's going to be the year. He's going to hit 25 at least home runs. He's going to drive in 100. He's going to hit close to 300. Year 4. Nothing. Like, they released his partner, Gavin Sheets, who's now out in San Diego, who made the team out there. I would have been fine if they released Gavin Sheets and Andrew Vaughn last offseason. But since Rick Hahn and part of the minor league outfit back then was Chris Getz, he's part of the drafting of Andrew Vaughn, they're going to give him another shot because he was 3rd overall. He was a Golden Spikes Award winner. And they're going to give him one more shot to be the guy that they think he is. I think you've had more than enough time to see exactly what Andrew Vaughn is. A below-average hitter, a below-average power hitter, a slow runner, and a terrible fielder. And I'm going to pause here, guys, because I know you're like, Herb, where's the positivity? You kidding me? Are you kidding me? There's going to be no positivity, especially when I'm speaking about this White Sox offense. You thought last year was bad. They had Eric Fetty and Garrett Crochet at the top of the rotation for a good majority of that season. And they still lost a major league record 121 games. I just read you off the 4 top hitters of the White Sox. Were you going to need outstanding years by these guys and outstanding health, which we know White Sox have not had in the last 10 years? So it's there's no going to be, this is not CHSN. I'm not the White Sox flagship. If you want positivity, if you want to be thought that this team is going to be great, you think hope springs eternal, God bless. Don't let me rain on your parade. What I'm going to tell you is this is going to be a bad season. It might be worse than last season. You might lose more than 121 games. How, Herb? These lineup, how are they going to score runs? Miguel Vargas setting the table? Good luck. I mean, the rest of the lineup. Lenny Sosa, you need another. That's another 4A player. Goes down to AAA, crushes. Comes up to major leagues, doesn't know how to play. This is his last year to prove something. I think he's all out of options, so he has to do what the White Sox think he can do. Like I said before, Travis Jankowski will have to play a decent amount, which you don't want to do. He's not the guy that helped the Texas Rangers win a World Series a couple years ago. He's more the guy that showed up last year in 2024. He's a guy that if you play him too much, he gets exposed. And then Michael A. Taylor, you hope he's the guy that showed up in Minnesota a couple years ago. That was a Royal a couple years ago. But that is another 4th outfielder that the White Sox are going to be giving mad time to. Good luck there. And then Corey Lee, he's a decent backup catcher. That is all he is. Great pop time. Great job with the catchers, with the pitchers and going through the game plan. But he knows the writing's on the wall. You got 2 catching prospects behind him and Kyle Teal and Edgar Carroll. How long do you think that they'll hold out, especially down there in Charlotte, which is a bandbox? Those guys were going to crush down there, and they're going to be knocking on the door here for the major leagues. And there will not be any Corey Lee, hopefully, starting games when we hit September. It should be all Kyle Teal and or Edgar Carroll by then. And then Brooks Baldwin, Amaya, Nick Maiden, like, ugh. I don't understand why they sent Chase Mydroff down to the minor leagues. He has nothing to prove down in the minor leagues. Last year, he had a full season with the Paw Sox, had a high on-base percentage. He has nothing to prove down there at AAA anymore. And this is the year you should be playing guys like Chase Mydroff here at the major leagues. Eventually, you're going to have a lot of Colson Montgomery here at the major leagues. I don't care about these veterans who are on the team, and I'm glad. I am so glad. Not that he got hurt, because I don't wish injury on anybody, but that Brandon Drury is not on the White Sox, because he would have been another guy taking starts away and playing time away from one of these young players that they could be playing. And I know the hand-wringing. Why'd you release Brandon Drury? Well, multiple reasons. He wasn't on the 40-man roster. And if he's hurt, like he was, you would have to put him on the IL. Either the short IL, and you would have to bump somebody off. So you're just having him on a spot on the 40-man for being hurt for maybe 2 months. Oh, put him on the 60-man, Herb. Okay. Why'd you sign Brandon Drury? to trade him away and get some good pieces. Cool. He's out for 2 months. Say he comes back in the middle of June. He has a month and a half to prove that he is the Brandon Drury of old, of Cincinnati days. Good luck getting anything back for that guy who's been oft injured himself since he's left Cincinnati. So let him go to some other team that can need him. And if he has found his swing, God bless. Let him do that. This is a long rebuild, guys. Crying about Brandon Drury, are we really there? Are we really here crying about Brandon Drury being released? That is the saddest thing I've ever heard. Like, let us be bad, but don't fool yourself that Brandon Drury is the reincarnation of prime Jeff Kent. Let him go ahead and go to some other team. And if he crushes, congratulations, Brandon Drury. You've resurrected your career. But what does that do for the White Sox if he is a great White Sox for 2 months? Nothing. Nobody's going to come back on the other side of that trade that you feel like, yeah, that guy's part of the future. Do you remember Paul DeYoung last year? I think he still led the White Sox in home runs before he left as a trade chip out to the Kansas City Royals. Do you remember who they picked up? Exactly. What do you think Brandon Drury is going to do? Same thing. You're going to get the same amount of prospect back or worse. So I'm glad he's not on the team. Good luck to him. I hope he does well somewhere else. But the thing is, if you want me to be positive, I'll be positive about the starting rotation. That is where the White Sox actually did the thing that they should be doing in letting the youngsters play. Sean Burke is your opening day starter. I disagree with it, but they're saying that this is a meritocracy in spring training, and he pitched the best in spring training, so he earned the spot. And I have no gripes about that. A young pitcher with premium stuff has climbed his way back from injuries, from Tommy John a couple years ago, and now he is the top of the rotation. You got Martin Perez, a wily veteran. He will be here for 3 or 4 months. And if he pitches like Martin Perez did last year for San Diego, he'll be shipped out to some other team, and somebody will be grabbing his services. Hopefully, the Texas Rangers for a third iteration of Martin Perez. And then 27, 28-year-old Davis Martin, my guy, Dart, who had a good rookie year for the White Sox, and then the last game of the season got lit up, so his ERA doesn't look as good as it should have been. Then he went through Tommy John surgery, as 6 White Sox pitchers this spring training are going through, and came back last year. Davis Martin pitched outstanding. He was awesome last year. And then, of course, Jonathan Cannon, after initial struggling at the major league level, came back and has pitched very well for the White Sox in 2024. I'm looking forward to him doing exactly what he did last year. And Rule 5, number 1 pick overall this past season was Shane Smith, who the White Sox grabbed. And it looks like he's going to be the 5th starter in this rotation. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he has, because he looked really good, especially against those Dodgers. He made Shohei Ohtani look silly out there. So if he can be that guy, if you can get the pitching staff of Brian Bannister, the head of pitching, to get these guys on the starting rotation to bear down, learn some new pitches, understand what the balls are doing or what other teams are trying to do to them, and try to miss bats, that will be great. As I told you before, the defense will be bad. So missing bats is premium for those starting pitchers. And I've already talked about Mike Clevinger being the closer. I do not like that, but they have a lot of live arms in the bullpen, a lot of funky stuff out there, especially by Penn Murphy. And I'm looking forward to him doing the damn thing for the White Sox bullpen. Got Cam Boozer from the Boston Red Sox, a couple other live arms out there in the bullpen. I think the pitching staff will be the showcase that you're looking for. Run prevention will be at a premium because, as I said earlier, they're not going to score a lot of runs. So they need to prevent the other teams from scoring runs. And it's very sad, like I talked about earlier, the 6 players who have Tommy John on their list right now for the White Sox, especially my guy, Drew Thorpe. I was expecting a big jump from him from last year to this year. But having Tommy John, I think, yes, it sucks for him, and it sucks that the White Sox have 6 players, but there's no better time to have all these Tommy Johns than at the beginning of a season so you can rehab and then be ready to go by mid-season 2026. Because this year doesn't matter. More than likely, next year doesn't matter. And when these guys are ready to ramp up, hopefully there's no lockout at the end of 2026. So in 2027, you can have a pitching staff that is both battle tested. Most of them have already had their Tommy John surgeries, and now they're ready to hit the ground running and continue to be the strength of the White Sox staff. Now, I know you're saying, Herb, give us something that is a positive that you think that the White Sox are going to do this year that they did better than they did last year. I think manager Will Venable will be a better manager than Pedro Grifol. And I think that my philosophy of managers don't matter that much in wins and losses will show up again this year, because I think Will Venable, while a great manager or a great manager candidate, can only do so much. And while I thought Pedro Grifol and Tony La Russa were actively harming the team with their moves or lack of moves and the stuff they said in the clubhouse and the morale that they produced in that clubhouse led to the team losing more games than they should have, I think will be a zero factor, a net zero factor as far as winning and losing games. The talent or lack thereof will determine their record. So that's the positive. You won't have a manager causing you to pull your hair out. You won't have a manager doing a lot of dumb things. And I know he'll still have rookie moments where you're like, Will, you could have done this better. I would have loved to pull that guy an inning earlier than an inning late. And as a rookie, he'll probably go to that. But he learned on one of the greatest managers of all time in Bruce Bochy while he's down there in Texas. So I think he knows enough about how to manage the game and has the respect of those players because he played the game, played it hard, and some of these players probably saw him play during his career. He's relatively young and probably will have the respect of these players because they know that he's done the everyday grind. Not saying that they didn't necessarily respect Pedro because he didn't go to the major leagues and didn't play in the major leagues, but I think you give more respect if you did play in the major leagues because you saw how glowingly they spoke about Grady Sizemore at the end of last year. They loved Grady, even though the record wasn't anything spectacular. I think he actually, percentage-wise, had a worse record in 2024 than Pedro Grifol. But talk to each one of those men who played under Grady Sizemore. They were gushing about him. And I think the same thing's going to happen with Will Venable this year and the White Sox bench bosses. So there's the positive that you want. There's the cherry on top. The White Sox will have a manager that won't cost them games. Yay! As far as where the record will be, I want to pick them for 54 games because the number is over under 53 and a half. But it's going to be really hard. As I said, this team can't hit. Their pitchers, solid. But as we understand, they've already got 6 guys with Tommy John in the spring training. I don't think that's by happenstance. And I don't think these 5 guys will end the year as the starting rotation. Because injuries happen, especially into pitching. And so, at the end of the year, I think the White Sox will be 1 game worse than they are this year, than they were in 2024. 40 and 122. They'll break their own record in consecutive years. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You've already had the embarrassment of doing that last year. This year would just be the crap on top of that. But I think the actual games will be more entertaining than they were last year. You'll have some comebacks in the 6th inning or more. I think they only won one game where they're trailing in the 6th inning or later and won that game. You're going to trade Luis Robert Jr. in the middle of the year. So the talent from that will dwindle. And if you're not going to be playing Kyle Teal, Edgar Carroll, George Wilco's years away, these other young pitchers are maybe next year. I think that the talent's not there to actually take a game from or take a series from the Tribe, the Tigers, the Twins, the Royals. 3 of those 4 teams made the playoffs last year, and they all look stronger this year. So, while the White Sox look worse. So, I just don't see it, guys. I hope I'm wrong. But you know me, if you've ever followed me, process is more important than results, especially this year. What you're looking for is the White Sox to play Chase Mydroff for a bunch of games, or Colston Montgomery to go down to AAA and absolutely rake. And they bring him up a month into the season and let him just be as good or bad as he can be at the major league level. I don't need to see Josh Rojas. You don't need to see Josh Rojas. That doesn't do anything for you. Get me all these prospects up here on the major league level if they're ready to go and play them. Edgar Carroll is good to go. Play him at catcher. What about Kyle Teal? Play him at first, play him at right. I don't care. Play him on the field. He has nothing to prove himself in AAA. But the fact that he's going to AAA with Edgar Carroll kind of makes me mad because we all know that Corey Lee is nothing there. Let me stop ranting because I've already passed 30 minutes. I'm getting myself worked up. The White Sox will be 40 and 122 this year, a worse record than they had last year. I believe that you will be pleasantly surprised by a couple of players that are on the team, but it won't lead to actual victories. So I will have this show, Addison the 35th, probably every Sunday night after a White Sox series. So I'll recap the series that just happened over the weekend, and I'm going to try to do a midweek recap of the mid series that happens from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday. If there's a one that the 4-game set, I'll do the episode on Thursday. It'll be available to you the next day on Friday. So I'll try to get these out here, and I'll try to be positive, but I can't be that guy. Buck's got you. CHSN. He's got you knocked out if you want some positivity. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the broadcast, see how John Schriffen does in his second year with Steve Stone. See if my guy Connor McKnight gets a couple more games on TV and radio this year. DJ and Lynn on the radio at ESPN 1000. I'm looking forward to listening to those guys. Brooke Fletcher, Gordon Beckham, Dan Plesac, all the folks at CHSN. I'm looking forward to entertaining product, even though the product on the field will be poor. And I hope I can see you guys at Guaranteed Rate Field or Rate Field. I'm just going to call it Sox Park this year because stop changing the goddamn name. I hope I see you guys at Sox Park this year because, as we know, the team might be bad, but the experience at the ballpark is undefeated. And I don't give a goddamn what Eric Burns or Will Clark's punk asses have to say. The worst stadium in baseball. I've been to 20 of them. And in my unbiased opinion, there is no way that Guaranteed Rate Field or Sox Park is the worst stadium in baseball. And he was calling you guys out as Sox fans. 2 trash people like that calling you out. I kind of wear it as a badge of honor with 2 garbage people like that telling me that my fan base and my stadium is the worst in baseball. Trash people, get out of here. So before I cuss a little bit more, I'm going to wrap this episode up. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about these badass White Sox. I hope that I am 100% wrong and you guys come up to me in September. Yeah, Herb. Yeah, the White Sox just won their 54th game. What do you got to say about that? Yeah, they're out here doing work. You see Mike Clevinger, he's saving all the games. Please, dunk on me. You were saying, Herb, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not going to be wrong, guys. This is going to be a bad team, worse than last year. So thank you for joining me here on Addison the 35th podcast. Like I said, we'll be having episodes on Sunday night into Monday and Wednesday into Thursday. Each series will be recapping those series and saying what happened and what we can expect from the series that's going to happen on the next couple days after that. So for myself, Herb Lawrence, Ryan Herrera, who covers the Cubs. So, subscribe to this whole podcast. If you're a Chicago baseball fan, we got you covered. I'll be covering the White Sox. Ryan be covering the Cubs. Sometimes we'll come together and combine forces like Voltron to cover Chicago baseball as a whole. So subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel on Spotify or Apple, wherever you find your podcast. And tell a friend about our podcast because we got Chicago baseball on lock. Talk to you later.